Sony picked June 18th, 2027 as the release date for Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, and that date is not random at all. It's Father's Day weekend in the US, chosen on purpose for a movie whose entire emotional core is a teenage kid racing across the multiverse to keep his dad alive. That single scheduling decision tells you everything about how deliberate this production has become, and it's a big part of why this has quietly turned into one of the most anticipated animated films in years. To understand why that detail hits so hard, you have to remember where Across the Spider-Verse left us back in 2023. Miles, tied to a punching bag in a universe that isn't his own, staring down a version of himself that grew up to be a criminal instead of a hero. That image sat on screens for what felt like forever, because Sony went almost completely dark afterward. The threequel was originally supposed to land in March 2024, then the 2023 strikes shut down voice recording, whole chunks of the script and storyboards got reworked, and the date kept sliding, first to June 2027, then pushed 3 weeks later, then pulled back a week to land exactly on Father's Day. For years, the only real updates were vague comments from producers Phil Lord and Christopher Miller about being deep in the animation pipeline, and the occasional co-president saying the art they were seeing internally was blowing their minds. It was the kind of silence that makes a fandom nervous. Then in April, Sony brought Lord, Miller, and directors Bob Persichetti and Justin Thompson to CinemaCon, and instead of another logo reveal or vague sizzle promise, they played actual footage, cut in a nearly square aspect ratio built specifically for IMAX and other premium large formats. That's a first for this trilogy. Every previous Spider-Verse movie was gorgeous, but none of them were engineered frame by frame for the biggest screens on the planet the way this one reportedly is. Critics who caught the exclusive screening came out of the room saying the animation had somehow topped Across, which is not a small claim considering Across won basically every animation award it was eligible for. The footage itself opens in the exact second Across cut to black. Miles is restrained, being interrogated by the Earth-42 version of his uncle Aaron, voiced once again by Mahershala Ali, except this Aaron never had the redemption arc the original one did. He stayed a criminal his whole life and never looked back. Then the Earth-42 Miles drops from the ceiling, cold and unimpressed, wearing the Prowler suit instead of a Spider-Man mask. Gerald Jerome voices him. And that casting choice matters, because this isn't meant to feel like the same actor doing a menacing voice. It's a different person entirely, shaped by a completely different life. The two trade barbs, there's even a strangely human beat where Prowler mocks the way our Miles pronounces his own last name, and then our Miles charges up his bioelectric venom shock, breaks free, and the fight starts. Two versions of the same kid, throwing hands, and somehow that's the whole thesis of the trilogy compressed into one scene. The footage and sizzle reel also included a flashback rendered in a completely different visual style, grittier and more retro, showing a young Jefferson and a young Aaron Davis together before their paths split. The films have hinted at this brotherly divide for two movies without ever actually showing it. In Miles' home universe, Jefferson walked away from crime and became a cop, while Aaron stayed in and eventually died working for Kingpin. Showing us who these two were before that fork in the road is clearly set up for the ticking clock the entire movie runs on, because the Spot has already promised he's going to kill Jefferson, and stopping that is the engine driving Miles through the rest of the story. It reframes the Father's Day release date one more time. This is a movie about a kid trying to rewrite the ending for his dad, releasing on the one day of the year built around fathers. On the subject of the Spot, his arc might be the best surprise the trilogy has pulled off so far. Jason Schwartzman played him in Across as an almost comedic nuisance, someone Miles could barely be bothered to take seriously, and the movie slowly, methodically let him absorb more interdimensional energy until he became something the entire multiverse should fear. By the time Across ended, he was calmly informing Miles that Jefferson was going to die and then vanishing. Lord has described the visual direction for the Spot in Beyond as pushing into a level of abstraction mainstream animation hasn't really attempted, with early comparisons floating around to the trippy, dissolving imagery of A Space Odyssey. If that comparison holds up on screen, a fully powered Spot might not even read as a person with holes in his body anymore, more like a walking collapse of the boundaries between worlds. Kingpin is confirmed back too, with Liev Schreiber returning to voice the man who cracked open the multiverse with his collider in the very first film. What's interesting is that the marketing material apparently frames his return using visual language that echoes the Spot's own dimensional effects, almost suggesting their stories are tangled together somehow. Kingpin has always been a character who tries to weaponize other people's power for his own gain, and the Spot's abilities are exactly the kind of thing a man like Fisk would want to control. Whether that turns into an actual alliance or a fight over who's really in charge is one of the more interesting open questions heading into next summer. Then there's Miguel, voiced by Oscar Isaac, who might be the most layered character this franchise has produced. He's not a straightforward villain, he's a man who watched his own universe collapse after trying to cheat his own tragedy and built an entire authoritarian philosophy around making sure nobody else got the chance to make his mistake. The rescue side of the story belongs to Gwen, who spent 2 movies learning to stop pushing people away and finally gets to lead instead of follow. Footage shows her team arriving in a getaway van right in the middle of the Earth-42 brawl, and the roster is a genuine reunion. Peter hands his infant daughter Mayday off to Spider-Ham mid-chase, and Spider-Ham, voiced by John Mulaney, cheerfully agrees to hold her while admitting he's completely out of milk, which is exactly the kind of gag energy that was missing when he barely appeared in Across. Spider-Punk, voiced by Daniel Kaluuya, is back as well, reportedly asking Miles point-blank whether he genuinely thinks he can save his dad, beat the Spot, and dismantle Miguel's entire system all by himself, a line that basically summarizes the whole third act ahead of us. Kaluuya's version of Hobie was such a breakout that a Spider-Punk spin-off is reportedly already in development at Sony, and a Gwen-centered project has been floated as well. Pavita returns, having sided with Gwen's group after watching how Miguel's Spider Society treated Miles. Spider-Noir is back too, voiced once again by Nicolas Cage, whose live-action series already premiered on MGM Plus and Prime Video this past May, meaning audiences are walking into Beyond already reacquainted with his version of the character in a way that feels deliberately timed, and the van apparently isn't full yet. Lord and Miller have confirmed the film introduces brand new Spider-People who never appeared in either previous entry, and 2 unidentified figures are visible riding along in that same rescue scene, which means there's still a genuine mystery sitting inside the footage nobody has solved yet. The wider cast list adds some interesting wrinkles too. Brian Tyree Henry and Lauren Velez are confirmed to return as Jefferson and Rio, which matters enormously given how central Jefferson's survival is to the plot. Kimiko Glenn is back as well, and Greta Lee has joined the voice cast in a role nobody has detailed publicly yet, which has fans speculating about who exactly she might be playing given how packed the existing roster already is. There's a fan theory circulating that ties directly back to something Miles casually mentioned in Across about needing 2 cakes for 2 birthdays happening on the same day. Miguel's entire canon events framework is built on the idea that every Spider-Man has to suffer a specific, unavoidable loss to become who they're meant to be. But by this point, both versions of Miles have already lost enormous amounts. Our Miles lost his universe's Peter and his uncle Aaron. Earth-42 Miles lost his father outright. The theory going around is that between the 2 of them, the multiverse's debt has effectively already been paid, and that this becomes Miles's actual argument for breaking Miguel's rules once and for all, rather than just physically overpowering him. Given how these movies have always favored emotional logic over brute force, that would be an extremely fitting way to resolve the ideological fight that's been building since the first movie. Behind the camera, there are a few production details worth knowing. Alice Brooks, a cinematographer known for live-action work, was brought on specifically to shoot certain sequences with a grounded, intimate camera language that this animated franchise hasn't used before, which should create an interesting contrast against the increasingly surreal visuals surrounding the Spot. Composer Daniel Pemberton is returning to score. Comic-Con is coming up later this month, and there's a real chance Beyond gets a proper moment with an actual public trailer drop, since so far the footage has only been shown to CinemaCon attendees and press.